Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Today's episode is the second in the series of 2017 season previews. We'll be focusing on the Cleveland Browns today, the team that finished with the worst record in the league last year and had the number one overall pick in the draft. So if you didn't tune in to yesterday's episode, which was about the New York Jets, what I'll be doing is going through my projected starters at every position. This includes nickelback, in some cases second tight ends, when I think the team uses multiple tight end sets often. In the case of teams like this, where I think there's a lot of open spots, training camp will of course be vital for determining them. But if this team were to play a game tomorrow, I'm pretty confident the lineup would be very close to the one that I'm offering you. I'll then be going through the team's schedule, more of a brief overview, giving my projected record for the season and where I feel in the case of a team such as the Browns, they may be able to pick up some wins. And then going through what I think are the three key areas that could get this team to perform above expectations next season. So we'll hop right into the projected offensive starters for the 2017 Browns. At quarterback, I've got Cody Kessler. I thought he played quite well last year considering the lack of talent around him and the fact that he was a rookie. Unfortunately, kept getting injured, as did all of the Browns quarterbacks, and wasn't able to gain much momentum. Brock Osweiler was an absolute bust last year for Houston. I just can't see him starting, and I'm not sure Deshaun Kaiser will be ready. So week one, Cody Kessler, and we'll see if he can keep hold of the job as the season progresses. At running back, I think we'll see the same pairing as last season. Isaiah Crowell and Duke Johnson. Crowell being the lead back, Johnson will share some of the load, and I think he'll be the primary receiving option. Neither one of them has been outstanding. Could certainly see somebody break through in training camp and eat into carries, possibly even become the lead back, but you have to assume these two have some experience and will be the guys most likely to carry the load next year. At wide receiver, I think we've got two givens in Kenny Britt and Corey Coleman. Britt is a veteran. They don't have too many of those in this receiving group, even if he's not been the most dependable target, a very streaky player. I expect to see him as the number one. Corey Coleman was, of course, a first-round pick last year, so he'll be the number two. He's got a lot of speed. Who knows, with more experience, he could develop into a really solid player. I've currently got Ricardo Louis as the favourite to be the third wide receiver, but I think the spots beyond the first two are wide open and could certainly be any number of players that will be entering training camp. At tight end, I've got David Njoku listed as my projected starter. He was a first round pick. He's got incredible talent and could develop into a great receiving tight end along the lines of a Jimmy Graham, Jordan Reed type player. He's very raw. I'm not sure he'll necessarily excel early in his career, but I think just getting him on the field, getting him more experience at the position, he didn't play a huge amount in college, will only help speed up that process. And this Brown season is more for the future than 2017 anyway. The offensive line at tackle, Joe Thomas, of course, at left tackle, the future Hall of Famer. I think Cam Irving may end up getting the start on the right-hand side. He was a first-round pick. There is some physical talent there. There's no clear option. I think they'll give him a shot, but I do think that this is a wide-open battle. In training camp, he has underachieved since he was drafted. At the guard spots, Joel Bitonio and Kevin Zeitler, two of the highest paid guards in the league now, both in their prime, very talented players. Expect them to be a real strength of this team. JC Tretter was signed to play centre from the Packers. He'll be the starter there. And then rounding out the group is the kicker, Cody Parkey. It's not the most explosive looking bunch on paper. Of course, the offensive line looks to be a big strength, some real solid players along that, borderline elite players, a lot of spots in that group. How these young skill players do, I think, will determine a lot of the Browns' offensive success. They're going to have to run the ball well, you'd have to think. Kessler's going to hopefully stay healthy and get an opportunity to build some momentum. I do feel he's got a low ceiling, but I think he showed enough last year to think he could be a mid-level starter. Maybe with the Hue Jackson thing, he can have some Andy Dalton-like success for this team. Don't expect them to be scoring a huge amount of points though, but they may improve as the season goes on, as that skill group gets more and more experience and more familiar with the system. Defensively, still unsure whether they're going to play a 4-3 or a 3-4. Personally, I would like to see them play a 4-3. I think the talent they've got on the defensive line is probably better suited to do so. I think Garrett and Ogba, who I've got as the starting defensive ends, would be perfect in a 4-3. In a 3-4, I'm sure they can play there, but I'm not sure it's as great a fit. At nose tackle, I've got Danny Shelton. If it's 3-4, I think Larry Ogunboji could certainly be the second defensive tackle if they do go over 4-3. That would give them a really large pair of run stuffers. They did struggle against the run last year. I think that would be an effective group. Outside backer, Jamie Collins. I think that's a given. One of the few veterans in this group. I've currently got Nate Orchard as the sort of veteran who's got a chance at starting at outside backer. I think again that's going to be a wide open position battle. Whoever earns it in camp is going to get that spot. For the middle linebacker spot, Christian Kirksey, I think he's a given. Again, he was re-signed. He played quite well last year. I've got Dominique Alexander as the likely second inside backer if they do indeed play a 3-4, but not sure that one's exactly nailed on. At corner, Joe Hayden will be the number one. He seems to have regressed, I think, because of injuries in the last couple of seasons, maybe not playing at the same level he was early in his career, but still a solid starter. I think behind him, Jamar Taylor and Jason McCourty will be battling for snaps as the second and third corners. McCourty had some solid years with the Titans. He's not the most gifted player, but he can certainly play a zone scheme effectively. Jamar Taylor never really developed in his time with the Jets. He'll get another opportunity here. I do think if someone impresses in camp, they'll be able to battle their way into some snaps among the corner group. At safety, Calvin Pryor, who was acquired via a trade with the Jets. I expect to see him starting at strong safety. If anything, just to see what they've got. He was a first round pick, of course. There is some physical talent there. And Jabril Peppers, how he's going to be used, who knows? Of course, he was a jack of all trades type weapon for Michigan in college. Whether the Browns seek to utilise him in a similar way, I'm not sure. Maybe he could be a Tyrann Mathieu type player running around in the nickel, playing a little bit of linebacker, lining up at safety. Playing him at free safety seems like it might be a risk. It's not particularly experienced secondary, but that may end up being what they do. And Britton Colquitt rounds out the group as the punter. Perfectly solid punter. Defensively, this is a real enigma of a unit heading into the season. As I say, I'm not even sure what scheme they're going to end up going with. A lot of investment in that defensive line. They're going to need to be good. As I say, I think it's a pretty patchwork secondary. There's first round pedigree there in Hayden, Pryor and Peppers, but traditionally rookie safeties tend to struggle. Pryor was an abomination in coverage while he was with the Jets. And as I say, Joe Hayden hasn't looked quite the same. Garrett is a rookie, of course. Emmanuel Ogbah only going into his second year. They're going to have to try and keep some pressure off of this group, I feel. Danny Shelton needs to step up. He's not performed up to his draft status at this point. And the linebacker group, that's where some of the experience is. But if the pieces around them aren't playing well, I'm not sure it's going to matter too much. This group certainly feels like it could be anywhere across the board, frankly. And now, I've got a 5-11 projected record for the Browns for the 2017 season. Last year, of course, they were 1-15. Looking at their record, their schedule certainly doesn't look like the most challenging. I think there's a possibility they might be able to steal a win off of the Ravens and the Bengals in the season series. I'm not particularly impressed with either one of those two heading into the season. The Jets is, of course, a winnable game. That one could go either way. The AFC South, frankly, is just a question mark every year. Whilst the Titans look like they could be quite a strong team, the Texans are great defensively. The Colts are a massive question mark, especially with a defensive rebuild They went under. The Jags, until proven otherwise, are a bottom feeder as far as I'm concerned. The Bears, that's a winnable game. Even the Lions, who I think were far worse than their record last year indicated, Stafford really did manage to drag that team to the playoffs. I think those are all games where the Browns can steal some wins. I think with the talent on the offensive line, we'll enable them to be a bit more productive. Really, I think how these players on the defence gel, how quickly that happens, will determine how far this unit goes. But I'm going to be slightly ambitious and go with a 5-win record. So for me, the 3 key areas for this team to overachieve, and for me, overachieving would be 7-9, 8-8. 8-8 would, feel like making the playoffs, I think, after how last season went for a Browns fan. The quarterback spot. Last year, it was a absolute mess with players getting injured. It felt like every other week. RG3, Cody Kessler, McCown. It was a disaster. So Kessler, who I think was the most promising of the 3 and looked pretty good, he needs to stay healthy, establish himself as the quarterback for this team. Maybe not establish himself for the future. I think that will require quite a lot, but show enough that Kaiser and Osweiler never see the field. If the offensive line can keep him healthy, I think that's certainly a possibility, but they need stability at that position if they're going to have a successful season. The defensive line, as I hinted at earlier, talking about the defence, a lot of high draft picks there. Secondary's got issues. This line is going to have to get pressure in order to help alleviate some of those coverage issues I expect the team to have. On top of that, they've been atrocious against the run the last couple of years. Danny Shelton needs to step up there. Again, these young linemen around him at end in Ogba and Garrett, they're going to need to show that they can help out in the run game as well as be effective pass rushers. Otherwise, I feel this defence could fall apart and be once again a major weakness. And also the offensive line. They simply have to perform up to the standard that's going to be expected of them. They've been heavily invested in. On paper, they look like a great group. They need to perform that way. Teams that have rebuilt and developed a great offensive line have had success recently. If you look at the Raiders, the Titans and the Cowboys, they've gone from teams with very poor records to improving in the space of a couple of years. The Browns seem to have seen that and made these moves in order to try and facilitate a similar kind of turnaround. We'll see if they can do it this year. They're going to have to perform. The interior looks really good for a team like this, like the Titans and Cowboys in particular last year. Ball control is going to be needed. They're not as talented as a lot of teams in the NFL, not as experienced. The run game is going to have to be successful because of the O-line, because I don't see any game breakers there. And they're going to have to keep Cody Kessler or whoever plays quarterback upright. They cannot afford to have a revolving door at the quarterback position because of injuries. Again, last year, no one could have succeeded behind that offensive line. So there you have it. That's my season preview for the Browns. As always, let me know what you guys think, whether it's in the comment section below on the Cover Zero Facebook page or find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to discuss ball. Let me know if there's any guys you think might be breakout stars for the Browns, any players I've got horrifically wrong here, how you think they're going to do, whatever it may be, even if it's not about this particular episode. Always good to talk football. And yeah, if you've enjoyed it, check out some more. As I say, the Jets episode's gone up. We'll be doing the Niners tomorrow, the Rams the following day, and as usual, the weekly review on Friday, which will include my list of the top 10 wide receivers currently in the NFL. Of all the lists I've done, this was probably the most difficult. It's a very competitive position in the league at this point in time. A lot of great wide receivers. And as always, if you can like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. It'll be greatly appreciated. So once again, thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great evening and go Bucks.